And there he
And
is.
I hope, Scott, I hope you
Hi.
don't mind that I called you by your first name. I figured since you wanted to be on our show, that's okay. And you may call me Linda because you are a guest on our show.
Hi.
So this is Scott McGuiness. You may not recognize him without his sign, but yeah,
All right.
usually
I'm
he's
out
got
of uniform here.
the big sign over his shoulder there. So welcome, sir. I was talking to Dina earlier from the
Yeah.
Stoughton court, and just chatting with her about her involvement in this movement. I'm calling it. Give us your involvement. How did it happen, and why are you so passionate about it?
A long-time turtle rider. Prior to Aiden's story coming out in April of 2023, story one, when he basically broke this case wide open. I've been full speed ahead since that day. I started attending the pretrial hearings. I think it was July of 2023, and I pretty much go to every court date. So
Wow.
I became, amongst the fold in the Free Can Read movement, and the OGs like Dina and the Sweeneys and all those people have been down in front of this court since pretty much July of 2023. Is that famous footage you'll see on court TV when we're up on the steps of the courthouse, which was quickly banned. So that I think that was the July 2023 court date.
And how is that in relation to, we've heard about the Canton Nine and all. Were you on board before or after? In terms of people watching and knowing about everyone that's really had some significant trauma related to this case by supporting the Free Karen Read movement.
Well, I mean, the Canton Nine were boots on the ground in front of the courthouse. They just decided that at that particular day to set up camp across the street from D&E Pizza and do a little demonstration there, and that didn't go well with the townies. Chris Albert has all his connections to the DA's office. There was already a special prosecutor, Kenneth Mello, on the Turtle Boy case, because when they started coming after Turtle Boy for all this witness intimidation, obviously DA Michael Morrissey was conflicted out of the situation, so that's when he hired Kenneth Mello. And Chris Albert seems to have these direct lines to Lieutenant Detective Trooper Tully. He had a direct line to Kenneth Mello, and that's when he called Kenneth Mello, and Mello called Canton PD. Hey, these 9 protesters are across the street from D&E Pizza, because Chris Albert was butthurt over it. And that Kenneth Mello is the one that pretty much devised and concocted the weaponization of the witness intimidation statute in Massachusetts, which is poorly written. It's probably one of the worst in the country. It includes emotional harm and financial harm, which is obviously in direct conflict with the First Amendment of our country. It's the law needs to be changed. If you look at Timothy Bradel, who abhors the Massachusetts witness intimidation statutes, he wants them rewritten or fight them all the way to SCOTUS. That's how much Timothy Bradel abhors the witness intimidation statute in Massachusetts. It's far too broad.
Yeah, I think he's almost made a career out of it. But I tend to think that it's not as much the statute's fault as it is the people using it.
Correct. It's never been weaponized until now. I think that law was last revised circa 2013. And I think what happened was it went through the legislature, and I think the emotional harm and the financial harm aspect or prong of that statute was tacked onto it, and I probably assume I don't know the case law at that time, like why the current statute was amended to be what it is now. But I can imagine it was probably a DV situation or whatever. Oh, we need to protect witnesses, right? So they added the emotional harm prong to it and the financial harm prong to it with all good intentions, right?
Right.
And then the law kind of just got used like it was supposed to be used. And then you have in my opinion, a corrupt DA's office like Michael Morrissey with his sneaky special prosecutor, Kenneth Mello, reading over the statute and saying, oh, you know what? We can weaponize this statute. We have this Payne journalist, Aiden Carney, Turtle Boy, exposing all the corruption in our county. This is how we can get him back. And then they were using it on Aiden first. And then they started the Canton Nine, Richard Schiffer, and the distribution of the rubber ducks, which came out of the Alan Jackson quip from Trial 1. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So that's how the duck thing came in. So
which
Schiffer,
also led to some witness intimidation charges that were ultimately dropped.
Right. So Walsh down in Stoughton. So Stoughton District is where anything that happens in Canton, Stoughton, or whatever, you know, it goes to the district court first. So it goes to Stoughton, which, you know, DA Michael Morrissey's office is in Canton. So Stoughton is like the first level epicenter of Morrissey's power. You know what I mean? So they file these criminal complaints. It goes to Stoughton District. I mean, Turtle Boy's had problems there. Previously, there was McAlbert's trying to get RPOs placed on Turtle Boy, you know, or he's harassing me or whatever. And the funny thing is that it's easier to weaponize this witness intimidation statute and make it have teeth than it's far more difficult to get a protective order, because you have to have physical threats or whatever. The standard in this terribly written witness intimidation statute is the standard's way lower. All you have to do is cause emotional harm or financial harm. So it's actually easier to charge somebody with witness intimidation in Massachusetts than it is to get harassment protection order or the higher restraining order. You have to meet a higher bar to get those orders from a judge in Massachusetts. But you have a corrupt special DA like Kenneth Mello. He's been replaced with Cosgrove, a retired Massachusetts judge. But this is the first DA in Massachusetts, or his special prosecutors, because DA Morrissey likes to do this. He puts himself on the sidelines and hires these special prosecutors. Now we're seeing it in the Karen Reed trial too, which is ridiculous. He's only got 40-something DAs in his office that refuse to prosecute Karen Reed in trial 2 because they don't want to sail on a ship of fools. But anyways, these McAlberts have tried to get harassment prevention orders placed on Turtle Boy, and they failed. And Turtle Boy went to Stoughton District Court to get the transcripts or dockets, and one of the clerks that work there, you know, freedom of information, public information, she gave those to Turtle Boy. And DA Michael Morrissey found out about it, and he actually had her terminated.
Wow.
That's how much power DA Morrissey has in that courthouse. Wow. He can call that courthouse and just throw his weight around. So, you know, we look at it as Free Karen Reed or Turtle Boy supporters. We look at Stoughton District Court as almost like a joke, because DA Morrissey can get on his burner cheesy banana email or make a few calls down at that courthouse, and he runs it like a puppeteer.
I thought it was interesting today when Attorney Bradel was talking to the court about the common sense that should be applied to some of these allegations and these charges. He said Stoughton gets it. Now he's obviously digging, the court here when he says that, but he was referencing the Canton Nine, and others where those charges have been dismissed. I think he cited 5 different cases.
Mainly Judge Walsh. Walsh is getting tired of this. At first it was Kenneth Mello, and now it's Cosgrove, and they're dragging all these crazy witness intimidation cases into his courtroom, and he's literally done with this, because I think that judge is just seeing like how ludicrous this is.
It's like
this week he's on vacation. This week we had the fill-in judge. Right. Cosgrove makes a long-winded argument about all the terrible things Turtle Boy's doing. And it got scary there for a minute.
And maybe another reason, Michael, that this was going on, not only did they change their mind and they wanted to try to revoke bail because they knew Judge Walsh was on vacation. But let me tell you, sui generis, thank you, Sui. I'm disgusted that 2 attorneys in different cases have now called Mr. Betterow, who's an attorney for Dr. Turtleboy, unethical in open court. Yet it's untrue, and they are protected. It is disgusting. And then she follows up, sui generis, thank you very much. She follows up with another donation. We really appreciate it. And then another, and thank you very much. As well as say, Linda's my hero. Thank you very much. As well as Dr. Bodden. He's my hero too. Been watching trials since early 90s. Love Linda's ethics and style. She has been an example for me, for my life and success today. So generous, thank you very much. And you can send us, Michael and I, an email to our email, which is justiceservedtv@gmail.com. Identify yourself and I'll respond back to you, and we can talk. Love to hear it. Thank you so much for being such a big supporter. And it's people like that allows us to bring our show to you and to have people like Scott on. And Scott, do you feel in any way that you are intimidated, that you really can't do or exercise your First Amendment like you'd like to because you're scared that charges will be brought against you?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't go down onto Washington Street in Canton right now and post up across the street from D&E Pizza. But as far as attending town select board meetings, going to court, Stoughton District, today we were demonstrating in front of the Superior Court in Dedham, and then we switched up and went down to Stoughton. Do I ever feel like I'm in danger of being charged with anything or being arrested? No, I don't have that fear. The only thing we had was last year in trial 1 when D.A. Morrissey concocted that motion for the buffer zone, which was originally 500 feet. And it had some other crazy things in there, like the free Karen Reed animals can't have free Karen Reed on them, or it was nuts.
Well, look, that's you bring that up, and they brought up a new one for this year, which they haven't addressed yet. You have that LKV.
I have it right here.
Which includes for buffer zone the ability to use reasonable force to enforce any violation. What's your thought on that?
I think the previous buffer zone. Bev rolled it back to 200 feet, and that was her compromise. You couldn't go past that 200-foot barrier toward the front of the courthouse with anything that said free Karen Reed. No signage. American flags were allowed. But, some days in trial 1, we had 300 people out there. Some people not regular free Karen Reed demonstrators. Their first day there, and they're going down to the Registry of Deeds building to use the bathroom, and they forget that they have their free Karen Reed, apparel on. And the State Police Community Action Team guys, headed by Sergeant Michael Hardman, the state troopers that we see in front of the court, right. They're kind of on the regular, so we know this particular Community Action Team group of troopers. We have a good working relationship with them. But, during the height of trial 1, we had some pretty big crowds down there. not all of them are regular free Karen Reed boots on the ground. So some people are a little confused, and they would get a warning like, "Hey, if you're going to come down here by the courthouse, you have to put your sign away, turn your shirt inside out, or whatever." But I think the last buffer zone didn't have any teeth. What they're trying to do now is get tougher with it. They want to be able to, like, if you walk down to the court and you still have your free Karen Reed shirt on, they want to be able to just bundle you and throw you in a paddy wagon. That's what Hardman's trying to make it sound like, anyways.
I can't wait to see that enforced. Yeah, I don't want anybody hurt, but I can't wait to see them try that.
I mean, I thought us regulars, and we have a large group of regulars, pretty much on a daily basis during trial one. I thought we were very well self-disciplined. We didn't have any issues, and even days when we had huge crowds there, the regulars are really good at, talking to the new people and giving them the rundown and showing them where the buffer zone line was, and this is what you do and you don't do.
Speaking of that, Scott, since I'm right here, give me a visual as to, I see the barricade that protects really the sidewalk from traffic.
So you're on the registry.
Is it corner to corner?
They want to extend it, Michael.
So if you turn around and you're looking,
Scott, just 1 second. They want to extend it because they said that it's not 200 feet. It's not good. They want to have the buffer zone extended to include the area encompassed within Bates Court, Bullard Street, Ames Street, and Court Street, and then of course, the mechanism, the reasonable physical force. Additionally, they have another situation, but so they're trying to extend this buffer zone because initially they wanted 500 feet. So really, it's almost like a 500 foot at one direction, right?
Correct. If Michael turned around, if you turn around, Michael, right, you're looking at the Superior Court,
right?
You look down to your right, you see where the church is.
Yep. Okay, that way. Okay.
So that the big green, that big lawn. That abuts the corner next to the courthouse.
Okay.
The 200-foot mark was a barrel, maybe 6 car spots down on your left.
All right,
where
I got you.
Where the church green is.
Yeah.
So from that point past that, that's where most of us congregated by the church or across the street. They want to push us way back from there because all we had between our protest group was the church green, and then the if you turned around, the right side of the courthouse. They don't want us in sight at all. They want us farther back.
Right. They don't want you in sight.
And that's where we congregate.
Right. There's clearly they don't want you being able to be seen. They certainly don't want Karen Reed to see you coming in. They don't want you, they don't want the cameras walking past seeing you guys. Yay. They don't want it. That shows support that we see every day going and coming. They don't want that shown because they want to push you so far back that there's no way she's walking back there.
And they also
but obviously Karen Reed's not afraid of us.
No.
It's D.A. Morrissey doesn't like the look of us out there. That's what it is.
And they're saying, right or wrong, that you can hear it in the courtroom and that the jury can hear it. Now, I've not been up there when the crowd's been down below. It's been pin drop when I've been up there. So I don't know. I
think that's exaggerated claims. I don't think they could really hear us that much. I really don't believe it. But it's not. It's even if we were at the 200-foot line, it's not like we were purposely like screaming and yelling, trying to disrupt the trial. I never saw that.
Yeah, I think that's a cop-out anyway. We've seen tons of trials. I was covering the Daniel Penny trial in Manhattan. I'm in the courtroom. You can hear the screaming and yelling down below, and the judge makes an instruction to the jury. Don't pay any attention to that, and and you hope that they can set that aside. To me, anybody in a jury that's swayed because they hear people yelling in the street, probably a problem anyway. But we've seen it before, and I think it's just a lazy excuse.
I mean, D.A. Morrissey has been upset with Free Karen Reed since we made Court TV and we were all up on the stairs. What he's been doing.
Now you're making Justice Serve TV. He's going to be even more upset.
Yeah. Now.
So now what he's doing is just trying to push us farther and farther away because it's a bad look. It makes his district attorney's office look bad. It has nothing to do with giving Karen Reed a free trial It has nothing to do with her safety. And believe me, when jury selection began last year, right around this time, a couple of weeks, we were very respectful. We stayed way back because jurors post up where you are right now, Michael. They post up in that Registry of Deeds building.
Yeah, this is a great location.
And then they walk them across the street to the front door of the courthouse. And we were very respectful of that. And then when the trial began, Judge Canoni decided to bust the jury in from a secret parking lot in another portion of Dedham. And we were told that the bus was going to pull up to the rear of the courthouse. And we were like, listen, even if we're in plain clothes and we're walking near the courthouse, the leaders in our group told the state police community action team and whoever else was out there, believe me, we totally respect it. We're not going to go back there. We're not going to make ourselves shown to the jury. I thought the buffer zone worked fine last time. But I guess they didn't like us congregating down by that church. We were still in sight. They just want to push us farther back.
Well, it's important to point out at this point, it's a request. There hasn't been any decision made
Yeah,
on
she
it.
hasn't ruled on it. I mean, she modified last year's. Morrissey asked for 500 feet and Bev cut it to 200 feet. So I don't know if she'll modify this motion by Michael Morrissey or Brennan, his, fill-in or whatever you want to call Brennan.
You are from the area. Do you know of any other high-profile trials around that have had this type of buffer zone, whether it be in Norfolk County or Suffolk County or anything like that?
I know they did have one in Dedham there. I forget what year it was, because it was a case involved animal abuse, and PETA and animal rights people were going to be protesting near the courthouse. And there was a buffer zone at that courthouse because it was concerning of the defendant. What's so funny about this buffer zone, the ruse is it's, to give the defendant a fair trial, which is a joke. Karen Reed loves us out there. She doesn't care if we're out there. This is all because it's a bad look for the DA. That's all this buffer zone's for.
Yeah.
And I've never ever seen any situations in Massachusetts with buffer zones. I mean, I was in a lot of courthouses in my career. I was basically a state marshal. I used to bring inmates to trial. So, an inmate's already sentenced, but now he's up for his next murder case or whatever. I've been to all 110 courts in this state over my career. So I've been in every court in this state, sat through countless trials, some very high profile ones. I've never seen buffer zone like this.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. Kay Schmidt, Gift of Justice TV, served 5 memberships, but Sui Generous loves you. Scott knows everything. He's worked so hard for truth for as long as for so long. Thanks, Scott. And then she, with a $5 donation, she follows up, Scott, because of you. God bless Scott. And thank you for having him on this show. So thank you very, 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 very much. And for all those who want us to also show the support for Scott in the show, please hit that like button. You got 400 watching right now, over 400 watching right now. Please hit that like button, because if we have likes, then we can keep inviting people like Scott on, because we're trying to show the other side. We're not, Michael and I, we've said a lot of times, we call it as we've seen it. I've been a prosecutor. I'm now a defense attorney. We call it as we've seen it, and we don't like some of the things we're seeing. Brooklyn's been a membership for 5 months. There's also a donation. By the way, Cosgrove admitted that the issue should be in civil court, lamented that it costs money and time. Thank you for your donation, a.k.a. the cat lady, but still insisted Aiden should be charged with this.
They were talking about how it's generally a defamation type situation, so that's a civil matter, and that it's elevated to a criminal matter when it becomes witness intimidation. So Cosgrove was admitting that there is that line. He of course felt that what Aiden had done crossed that line, but he did admit that there can be a civil component here, no doubt about it.
It goes back to what I was talking about. The witness intimidation statute has a lower bar.
Yeah.
So if you have a crooked DA that wants to weaponize it, which is now what's happened, it's turned into a Frankenstein roaming the countryside now. So you had these people trying to get harassment prevention orders placed on Aiden, and they couldn't win them because they didn't meet the criteria.
Yeah,
But
and as
now,
we saw
a
with
DA can just
Aiden,
say it's witness intimidation.
yeah, we
And,
saw with Aiden that turtle that was shot and put on his father's, hung up by its neck and put on his father's porch in Brooklyn. By the way, thank you for being a member.
Well, part of the reason, Scott, you're right about this, that the statute is sort of poorly written, is it allows subjective fear, subjective emotional concern, subjective economic. Now, you could press the economic and say, "We'll prove you're going to lose money somehow based on these statements." But the emotional, all I have to do is say, "I'm frightened by that. I feel intimidated," and that's enough.
I mean, I think you don't have to be an attorney or whatever. It's common sense. You're gonna know what witness intimidation is when you see it, right? Like if you're about to testify against me because you saw me rob the store, and I go up to you and say, "Mike, you're not testifying, or else," you know what I mean? Obviously, that's witness intimidation. The witness intimidation, which is so hilarious to me, is Aiden Carney, Turtle Boy, is going up to the witnesses and say, "Hey, why don't you tell the truth?" That's not telling them don't testify.
Yeah.
How dare you ask me to tell the truth? That's frightening me.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Scott, Michael had told me that first. He said when he was schooling me on what the charges were before we were doing our first show on this whole idea of intimidation. And Michael said, "So ridiculous." He pointed at somebody and said, "Tell the truth." I said, "No, he can't be being charged with witness intimidation by telling them to tell the truth, can he?" Mm-hmm. And yes, he is.
Well, I mean, if you believe that I believe that these people are all in cahoots and they're all lying and making up a story. If you tell them to tell the truth, you're telling them to give themselves up, and they get angry about it. Like, I'm intimidated.
You mean if I tell the truth, I'm going to be in trouble? I'm intimidated by that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah. So as being formally in, law enforcement, right? Basically what you've done.
Well, I was basically a correction officer for 32 years, but for like 20 of those years, I was on the road. I was a marshal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, marshal, law enforcement. I mean, these are some pretty amazing credentials. What do you see in the Karen Reed case that bugs you most? We talked about Aiden, but what do you see in the Karen Reed case that bugs you most as a person who has all of this experience, both as a marshal, corrections officer, but in the umbrella of law enforcement?
I mean, when I first read Aiden's story number 1, April of 2023, when you realize Canton PD, I believe the fix was in even before Canton PD arrived. I believe Brian Higgins went back to the Canton police station at 1-something in the morning. Calls were being made. All the connections were being put into place. I believe when Canton PD arrives at 34 Fairview at whatever time that was, 6 in the morning, they were already like hands off. We're not going in Brian Albert's house. We're not going to put up any crime scene tape or nothing because we don't want to draw attention to Brian Albert's house. They were actually lying about the address number of the house. They wanted to keep this on the down low. Don't make it a big deal. Don't draw attention to my yard. So you had no crime scene ever secured. Nothing was done correctly. It's just terrible police work. And then I thought about it some more. I go, no, this isn't incompetence. This is like done on purpose. You know what I mean? You have a dead or dying police officer on a front lawn. Obviously, they're gonna go in the house. Is there other victims in the home? Why isn't the homeowner coming out on his lawn? Why isn't Assistant Chief Kelleher across the street out here? Like, what's going on? So right there, that was like all red flags for me. Like, what are these people doing? And then Lieutenant Gallagher shows up with a leaf blower and solo cups. There's only a couple inches of snow on the ground. That's the other thing that drove me nuts about this case. ADA Adam Lunchbox Lally, the whole trial. How much snow was there? At 12:30, the alleged time of the accident incident, there was only like a dusting of snow. But by the time you get to 6 a.m., when they find John O'Keefe's body, there's 2-3 inches of snow max. The bulk of that storm was 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. later.
Yeah.
But the problem is, by the time the CERT team from the state police show up at 5 in the afternoon, now there is 18 inches of snow on the ground. And I think the ruse that they wanted to tell the jury and the public is imagining John O'Keefe buried in 18 inches of snow and nobody can see him.
Yeah,
that's one of the biggest lies of
weather
trial.
forecast. When we were doing this on Law and Crime, when it first came through, I pulled out all the meteorological records and went through it hour by hour to talk about what snow there was, and more importantly, what snow there wasn't. Right. Oh, by the way, Scott, I went by 34 Fairview. Look, I found this just today. So.
They're going to charge Michael Bryan. That's going to be his piece 49 because he's found 2 pieces.
Yeah, they just keep popping up.
By the way,
if you remember trial 1, when they're showing the ridiculous and ludicrous footage of Lieutenant Gallagher out there with a leaf blower.
We were on Law and Crime.
That was one of the
way.
first things that we saw, and when
on Law and Crime, when we were hosts on Law and Crime. And with not only that, the big red solo cups, and everyone started singing, this big red solo cup, and the leaf blower was what got me, because as a person who deals with forensic science and the proper collection, I've never heard anybody teach about red solo cups and a leaf blower. And thank you, Sui Generis. Again, Karen Reed supporters are calm and don't do anything to harm anybody, basically, what you're saying, shaking my head.
So they do this leaf blowing and collection of blood droplets in the solo cups and put it in the Stop and Shop bag. And they take off. Canton PD abandons the scene at 8-something in the morning. Doesn't even leave a cruiser there. I mean, one of the Canton officers was saying it was too windy for the yellow crime scene tape or whatever.
Yeah. Not like there are any
no, like I don't care if it's 50-mile-an-hour winds. You leave a cruiser out there guarding the yard. It's a crime scene. Meanwhile, the time of death on John O'Keefe is kind of like a gray area. I've heard stories about hypothermia where they're doing life-saving efforts in the emergency room, and sadly, if the person doesn't make it, they still keep trying until the internal body temperature is up to a certain amount before they can call it or pronounce death. So in Canton, other than Boston, Worcester, and Springfield, and I think Holyoke, where those police departments, those big city police departments, can investigate their own homicides and unattended deaths, everywhere else in Massachusetts, Canton police, they're not the murder police. Once John O'Keefe was pronounced dead, the state police detective group attached to that DA automatically take over the case. That was one of the things that drove me nuts about trial 1. They were trying to say that Canton backed out because of a conflict of interest. But regardless of that conflict of interest existing or not, Canton PD would have lost it anyways. It would have automatically gone to DA Meatball Morrissey's state police detective group. So whenever John O'Keefe was pronounced, this would have been easier. Sadly, if John O'Keefe was pronounced on the scene, the state police would have took it over like right away. But because life-saving efforts were made and he was, brought to the hospital, and his time of eventual death is like delayed. But once the state police took it over, it would have been a situation if the secured crime scene was actually secured. The state police would have came over and relieved Canton PD, taken over the scene. But instead, they abandoned the yard. Meanwhile, Buchanan and Proctor are coming up with theories. Buchanan's calling the hospital saying we think it's the domestic violence. I don't know what their original plan was, to say he was hit by a plow, whatever. They were making this up all throughout the day. And
Do you
then,
think the plow driver thought that he was going to get charged at any point? Do you think the plow driver was concerned?
Lucky, I don't think they. I mean, you got to remember, Lucky Loughran's brother is one of the select board members in Canton, and Lucky's the greatest, most honest guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they would have done that to him. Never mind his familial connections to the townies. You know what I mean? That might have been one of their initial like crazy ideas. Like let's say he got hit by a plow, and then they realized it was Lucky Loughran's route, and that idea died. And then they had a, because you got to realize when Canton PD does that first leaf blower search, there's no taillight in the yard.
Leaf blower search. That's a great way to put it. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
There's no taillight. All they found was a broken cocktail glass and a black cocktail straw. And there's only 2-3 inches of snow, even if you count for drifting here or there. No taillight in the yard at all. So I think it was like 10:30 in the morning. Buchanan's working on the DV, like, he got beat up in the yard and somebody smashed the cocktail glass that he was holding over his head, or some crazy story they had. It wasn't until later, by the time you get to the afternoon, where you got like Jen McCabe running around with, creating yarns, creating some kind of story. You know what I mean? Like, and I think the other thing that happened too was they got the ring footage from One Meadows, and Proctor, whoever it was, saw Karen Reed backing out of John O'Keefe's garage, and she struck John O'Keefe's Traverse. And then there was talk about, the taillight's cracked. And I think that's when the idea light bulb went off. Like, oh, perfect. Her taillight's broken now. We'll just say she backed into him. But the problem was the car at that point had been driven south to her parents' house in Dighton. And that's when Proctor and Buchanan head down the Dighton to tow it out of there, which is ridiculous. Like, I don't know how even Proctor has the evidence to even come up with towing her car back from Dighton. He doesn't photograph the thing when he tows it. And instead of towing it back to the nearest state police facility, because now it's a state police case, they bring it all the way back to the scene of the crime, and they bring it to Canton PD's Sallyport, which is outrageous.
That may be the scene of another crime, but yeah.
So, I mean, our theory is, meanwhile, the yard's been unsecured all day, and they're not calling state police crime scene, they're calling state police search and rescue team to search the yard, which that doesn't make sense either. And they keep holding off the CERT team, like, don't search yet.
Could you tell everybody what that is, what the CERT team is? Because a lot of times it was said in court, and a lot of people who are not from Massachusetts didn't know what that was.
Search and rescue team, so say there's a missing person in the woods or a fleeing suspect. These guys are like, Army Rangers or whatever. They're going into the bush to find somebody or whatever. They're not crime scene. I don't know why they called CERT team guys, and we don't even know who was on that team. Nobody took a roster. There was people in that CERT team group that might not even have been state police. We've heard rumors that some of them were Canton police mixed in with snow shovels, whatever they were doing in that stupid search. But anyways, you get anything Proctor and Buchanan did, Tully, nothing's by the book. No crime scene secured. Proctor's lying about what time he tows the car from Karen Reed's parents' house in Dighton, which gives him another hour and 15 minutes of leeway time to get the car back to the Canton Sallyport. Meanwhile, the CERT team's communicating like, hey, can we start digging in this 18 inches of snow? Oh no, hold on. Don't start yet. And meanwhile, we get the footage in the Sallyport where we believe the taillight pieces were being harvested. and brought over to 34 Fairview. Maybe even one of the guys that grabbed the shovel already had the taillight pieces in his pocket, and as he's shoveling, he's just tossing them out there.
Yeah. I don't know that. That could be the way. That could be the way it happened. What we do know is that it was days and weeks before all of the pieces were found. How in anybody's brain does that make sense? Tell me.
I mean, I don't think it makes any sense, but you know, when they found those first 4 or 5 pieces, they literally were only searching for less than an hour. They weren't digging all that long. They found 3, 4 pieces, and they're like, yeah, that's good. Wrap it up. And then I guess their story is somehow this taillight was buried under all this snow, and as the snow melted over time, more pieces appeared. But if you have the taillight and you only have 4 pieces, and you see that there's 37 pieces missing from the housing, you would cordon off that area and bring in snow melt machines, whatever you have to do until you find all the pieces. But there was never a crime scene ever secured or declared there. And all of a sudden, as days and weeks go by, these officers, including former police chief Kenneth Berkowitz, who's now deceased, these guys are just driving by and like, oh, there's another piece. Look at that. You know, let's grab that. Nothing's photographed. Nothing's documented.
Didn't they consider this a domestic scene, not a crime, not a homicide scene initially?
Yeah.
I don't know what they were declaring it initially. I believe they didn't want to make a crime scene out of it because now you have Brian Albert's front lawn, a crime scene, right across the street from Canton Deputy Police Chief Kelleher. I mean, this is all a bad look. We got a dead cop on a cop's lawn, and there's a cop that lives across the street. Like, we don't want any crime scene tape up here. That's just a bad look. And I think their initial plans of maybe he was hit by a plow or it was a domestic. I think that Karen Reed hit him with her Lexus idea came up a little later. I don't even think that was their original plan, if they had a plan at all. I don't know what their plan was. Well, so, to get all the way back to the beginning, you know, what brought me into this?
Yeah, that's going back to that question. I was going to go back to that question, but with a little bit of a twist.
It's way more than bad police work. I believe it's been corrupt in a cover-up from the get-go. I actually get frustrated with some of the people that are like, oh, you know, this is just shoddy police work. I go, it can't be. Or it was just Proctor taking care of his buddies, the McAlberts. But even Proctor would need a lot more help from his superiors and all the way up to the DA's office. There's no way Proctor could have pulled this off by himself.
You know,
but then if I talk like this,
here's what I want to ask you, Scott, because I want to use your temperament as an expert witness, okay? With all your years' experience. If you have a dead police officer, which he was, John O'Keefe was, and everyone wants justice for him, we want the right thing to be done, not the wrong thing, and you have him found at a police officer's home, what is the protocol for getting a search warrant for inside the home when somebody is found dead outside the home?
I don't know, but I've heard a lot of police officers, LV Cops. I don't know if you're familiar with their channel, but they said search warrant or not, if there's a dead or dying police officer on the front lawn of another police officer, we're going in that house. We're going to check on Brian Albert, his wife, his kids. We could have 2 dead cops and a whole dead family. Search warrant be damned. Or you at least bang on his door. They literally, Canton PD literally completely stayed away from his house like it was a no-go zone. Never mind all this, oh, we need a search warrant thing. I don't know, who said that in trial 1?
No, that's what I'm asking you as an expert here. So really what you're saying is they could have gone in as a wellness check because you've got a dead police officer at another dead police officer's house. So wellness check or crime scene, they should have been in the house is what you're saying.
I think so. I mean, everybody I've ever talked to has the same opinion. I mean, It's almost like Canton PD shows up and they know that Brian Albert and his wife and his whatever kids that were in the house were fine. Like we don't need to bother them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's
right?
crazy.
Somebody said this is it's a cop's house. That we're good. We're fine. So
I guess it just
go in.
It's. I mean, I guess some people look at it like, oh, there's no way you could have a local town police and state police detectives from the DA's office all in on this cover up. So now I got my tinfoil hat on, and you start sounding crazy. But I mean, that's what I believe, and a lot of us believe. To this moment, that this has all been a ruse. It's all been a cover up. And the sad part is because the crime scene was never secured, the house was never really truly searched. Chloe the dog disappears. She's allegedly rehomed in Vermont. I say she hasn't taken breaths in 3 years. The entire basement floor was torn out. Brian Albert quickly rushes to sell the home. I don't know how to get back to justice for Officer John O'Keefe. I don't know how he ever get justice for John O'Keefe, because if you believe he was beaten to the point of death or to death and dog bitten inside 34 Fairview, all the true evidence and witnesses have gotten away. It's say Karen Reed's acquitted and we're going to reopen the investigation into who really, unalived Officer John O'Keefe. Where do we begin? Like, sadly, even if Karen's acquitted, and I pray she is, because obviously she's innocent factually, I don't know how we ever find out what really happened to John, and if anybody will ever be held accountable, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest injustice. And if Karen Reed is acquitted, nobody's pursuing another suspect. They're not doing any of that.
Down the street a year earlier, you had Sandra Birchborn, or unborn child, unalived by Stoughton police officer Matthew Farwell. They deemed it a suicide. It took the feds to arrest him for it. Otherwise, nobody was ever going to investigate that one either.
Yeah, we know
the funny thing that happens in Norfolk County,
Scott, we know about that because let me just so I get the conflict out of the way. If there is one, there really isn't. But my husband was involved in the civil case and looked at it and said, "This ain't no suicide for the civil lawyers. This is a homicide."
Oh yes, I know that. Yeah,
right. And then Dr. Michael Bott, and then we went from there into the feds took it over. So yeah, right. We were and Stoughton is where you were. That's what's in Stoughton, and that's where you were today to support Aiden.
Correct. Yeah, Stoughton and Canton are buddy.
Right next to one another. Yeah. You go by the sign. On one side it says entering Stoughton. On the other side it says entering Canton. They're right there.
Yeah. No, my point was, this body's piling up in Norfolk County, and if the actual or potential suspects are police officers, doesn't get investigated. Worst case scenario, Sandra Birchmore, they pinned it on the girl. She offed herself. And the case of Officer John O'Keefe, pin it on the girl. Karen Reed hit him with her Lexus. Where the true suspects, if you look at this, are cops. So they're untouchable.
That's an interesting comparison to make that there. Wow. So where do you go now? What do you do now? Any other, besides being there for the support of Aiden Carney, Dr. Turtleboy, being there for the support of Karen Reed, what else do you do to try to make things better?
I do some activism. I write, state senators, the governor. I don't know. It's like throwing pebbles against a castle wall. But I do a lot of YouTube, moderator on several shows. I'll be moderating on Turtleboy tonight. That ought to be a big show. I mean, when I initially got involved in the Free Karen Reed movement, we didn't have these YouTube shows. We didn't have anybody covering it. You had Turtle Boy, and that's it. So a lot of our initial interaction was like on the Facebook justice pages and social media like that. But this has evolved now where we have major YouTube shows covering this. And I'm glad you guys are in it too now. But we have Melanie Little, we have Young Jerks, The Glarer, Turtle Boy. Now you even have the big ones like Emily D. Baker, Lawyer, Larry DYI guy. So fast forward to where we are today, there's a lot more, especially YouTube, out there following this case, which wasn't the case in the beginning.
By the way, I think Dizzy pointed out, I think, yes, I think the word was, by the way, in terms of Bettero's letter was harassment. The letter itself is harassment, not retaliation. In my mind, I transposed it because they did talk about retaliation in that. But I have to tell you, my sister has come up with the best line to help this, is that maybe in the United States you have freedom of speech, but not freedom after speech. Okay? That's a great line. Thanks, Joan, for that line.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a serious problem, especially with D.A. Morrissey. I mean, he's been an elected politician in Massachusetts since the 70s. He used to be a state senator. I know Larry DUI guy was talking about what's Bev's genesis, how she became a judge. Her connections go back to Quincy, Michael Morrissey's political power in Massachusetts. Circa 1985, she becomes a public defender. A lot of her years actually in Quincy District Court, the epicenter of Michael Morrissey's power. And I think it was 2008. Beverly got nominated to be a judge. I think 2009. Then sitting Governor Deval Patrick. I mean, there's a system, right? There's a judge nomination council, and then a sitting governor nominates you, and then it has to get cleared by the governor's council. But in Massachusetts, it's rubber stamps all the way. Basically, if you get a governor to nominate you to be judge, you're almost a shoo-in. And Bev became a district court judge in 2009. Deval Patrick was a 2-term governor in Massachusetts. So toward the end of his 2nd term, he nominated her to the Superior Court bench. So I think she was confirmed in 2014. So fast forward to today, what I think one of the problems is with Beverly Cannone is her deep-seated ties and loyalty to D.A. Morrissey. If anybody's going to accuse her of being corrupt, I would say her actions are explained by her unfettered loyalness to D.A. Morrissey.
Yeah, well, that's part of that.
That would be my black pill.
The appointment process, instead of electing judges, creates those connections that may not work out for the.
What's funny about Judge Cannone is she's normally a more liberal activist judge. Like she was a public defender for 24 years, and you look at her previous trials. Her last cop on a live trial, the Michael Chesna case. I don't know if you are familiar with that. Either one of you?
No, I'm not.
Career criminal Emmanuel Lopes, unalived Officer Chesna after getting his weapon, and then he took the weapon down the street and he unalived a woman in her house. So double. And Auntie Bev's got that trial out of that courthouse behind you. And she was worried about him not getting a fair trial out of her county jury pool. So she bussed her jury in from Worcester County on a daily basis to make sure that Emmanuel Lopes had the fairest jury possible. So Beverly normally in her trials is like sort of pro-defendant, which, I don't have a problem. You know what I mean? Like if she wants to make sure that this defendant has the fairest possible trial and has a fair jury, I can't argue with her, bussing a jury in from another county but that first trial ended in a mistrial because one of the jurors was a brat out of Worcester that didn't want to participate in deliberations. She kept sending the foreman back there, like trying to get her to do it. She wouldn't do it. I don't know how she couldn't be held in contempt, that juror refusing to deliberate, but that's another story for another
why did
day.
they just bounce the juror and put an alternate in there?
And she was telling the family of Officer Chesner they can't show emotion in the court. I mean, my point is she was bending over backwards to, pro-defendant. I would call him like a liberal activist judge. But when you see Beverly Cannoni in this trial, she's like done a 180, like, she's so pro-defense. It's like so out of her character. Like, so why would she be doing this? This isn't.
You mean pro-prosecution or pro-defense?
She's very pro-prosecution in the Karen Reed trial, but that's not her normal MO, is what I'm saying. So, like, why? Every judge, their style, like where they're going most of the time. She's so out of character in this one. It's like shocking. Like, why is she acting this way? And if you believe in the corruption and the height of it, that like I do and a lot of us do, Bev's only acting this way because she's desperately trying to save DA Morrissey's office. And there's also was allegations last year when she was asked to recuse herself that she has loose ties to the McAlberts. They were renting her beach house cottage in the Cape Cod. She denied all those connections to any of the people in this case. But I would think most judges, even if there's a thought or appearance of impropriety or connections there, she should have recused herself. So why didn't she? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why put yourself in that situation, Beverly? Like, so if you look at it pessimistic like I do, DA Morrissey called her up and said, "Hey, Bev, you own this. You owe your whole career to me. You got to save my butt."
That's what you think, though. We don't have any proof of that. That's the thoughts.
Oh yeah, no, this is just my theories, just my opinion.
All right, I know you have to moderate Aiden's show tonight.
Yeah,
you're going to be one tired person. We want to thank you for coming on. We're going to talk about things that are like the motions and the I wore pearls today because there was a lot of pearl ringing.
You're clutching them.
There was a lot of clutching.
It was very dramatic today. Very dramatic.
Today was a roller coaster. Bev scared me in the morning. And then I thought the judge in Stoughton was going to lock up Turtle Boy.
Yeah, it was a lot of drama.
And we've been, just so you know, Justice Hub TV, we're a young channel, but we've been on the YSL case. Doug Weinstein's been here. Ashley Merchant's been here. We had the first interview with Joe Tacopino on ASAP Rocky after, before, where we're waiting for everything, before even TMZ. And Michael O'Brien has made the trip now out to Canton, 3 or 4 times at least. So we've been covering this case.
Name a street after me, I think.
Yeah.
Mike's getting to be a regular down there without boots on the ground.
Yeah, we've been covering this trial for, and we intend to continue covering it because once we went out on our own somewhere around mid-September and decided to do this, and this trial came up. And my history with Alan Jackson. I tried a case against Alan Jackson where I had the hung jury Specter case. He and I have a great mutual respect for each other. And also we kind of know the little bit of the players in the case. We decided to cover this and take a good hard look at it. And we call it as we see it. We call prosecution cases for them. We'll call defense cases for them. We'll call suspicious activity when we see it. We ain't going to be bought by anybody or scared by anybody because we believe in freedom of speech, both before and after.
So you haven't been paid by Free Karen Reed people?
No, I haven't been paid by Free Karen Reed people. And if Michael Bryan goes to jail as a result of all this, I'll bail him out.
T-shirt, I got nothing. I'm clean.